In the huge arc of territory which stretches from the Euphrates around the northern edge of the Syrian desert, along the eastern Mediterranean to the Nile Valley, much of human history was made. It was the Fertile Crescent because either river irrigation or winter rainfall nurtured productive farmland and settled populations. The central portion of this arc is the isthmus of land which connects Egypt with Anatolia, central Turkey. Bounded on the west by the Mediterranean and on the east by the Syrian desert, it is some 500 miles long and 75 miles wide. Later called the Levant, it today comprises Lebanon, Israel, and the western parts of Syria and Jordan. All the great powers of the ancient world fought over and occupied this stretch of land. It contains the oldest continuously inhabited towns on the earth, such as Jericho and Byblos, Jubal. It was the birthplace of Judaism and Christianity. The name of its most famous city, Jerusalem, still arouses more passionate responses than any other. The glorious, if violent, history of this territory was shaped by its geography. Its features run north and south. First, the narrow coastal plain, then the upland chain from the Alawite or Nusayriya mountains of Syria to the north, through Mount Lebanon, Galilee, Samaria, and Judea to Beersheba. To the east of this, a deep rift is formed by the valley of the Orontes, the Bekaa Plain, the Jordan Valley leading to the Dead Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba and the Red Sea, and then another mountain chain, the Anti-Lebanon, Mount Hermon, Karak, and the mountains of Moab. Because the winter rains are blown in from the west, the land is most fertile on the coast and the western slopes of the mountains. Eastwards, the farmlands become pasture until they merge into the limestone steppe of the Syrian desert stretching to Mesopotamia. The city of Damascus stands like a port on the western edge of this wilderness, which was always a more formidable barrier than the Mediterranean Sea. This short causeway along the eastern Mediterranean between Egypt and present-day Turkey was the scene of an astonishing and productive mixture of peoples and cultures. They came from all directions. The non-Semitic and highly civilized Sumerians from Mesopotamia dominated Syria for about 1,000 years, from 3,500 BC. They were defeated by the Semitic Amorites, nomads from Central Arabia, but the Sumerians taught their conquerors how to write and how to farm the land. Babylonians in the middle of the 3rd millennium were followed by Egyptians, who first conquered the coastal plain of Syria at about the same time. The Egyptians were frequently driven out by the new invaders, such as the warlike Hittites from Asia Minor, who took all of Syria in 1450 BC, but just as often they returned and recovered control. The settled inhabitants of Syria and Palestine were known as Canaanites from about 1600 BC. Almost certainly they did not constitute a single race, but were formed through a mingling of peoples, some of whom came from the sea and some from the desert. They never created a powerful imperial state of their own. They submitted to the successive ways of conquerors, paid them tribute, and traded with them. They were skillful workers in metal. One people who came to settle on the Levant coast in about 1400 BC was the extraordinary seafaring Phoenicians, who established trading colonies on most of the Mediterranean shore and even on the Atlantic coasts of Europe and Africa. Carthage, Tyre, and Sidon are the most famous of these. The name Phoenician derives from the Greek word for purple. The Tyrian purple dye was renowned throughout the ancient world. Many Lebanese of today like to think of the Phoenicians as their ancestors. Another wave of invaders came from Central Arabia, the Arameans. By about 1200 BC, they had gained control over Damascus. They took their culture from the more civilized, settled inhabitants of Syria, but it was their Semitic language, Aramaic, which became the lingua franca of the region and was spoken by Jesus Christ 1,000 years later. About a century after the Phoenicians,